friends, and welcome to episode 29 of Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. I'm Kimberly, your host, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. Did You Bring the Hummus is a podcast to help you go vegan. Every 2 weeks, I'll share a new episode discussing all things vegan. Most importantly, we'll talk about how to embrace this meaningful decision with fervor and fun. Episodes post every other Monday on your favorite podcast app. Before we get started, I have one very important question for you. Did you bring the hummus? Today, I am joined by Kelly Kerr, aka the VeganAbler. She's a plant-based chef and vegan facilitator, supporting those on their plant-based journey. She's a lifestyle coach offering various services from shopping support to virtual cooking classes to families and businesses. Kelly is the founder of the VeganAbler Collective, a network of food solutionaries connecting chefs, coaches, and businesses worldwide. In this episode, we do talk about eating disorders and fat shaming. If you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, please visit the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders at aned.org or NADA at nationaleatingdisorders.org for help. Hi, Kelly. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited about today's topic. It's
Me
really
too.
important. It's a really important one, and I know it's been talked about more and more, even with veg news, and but it's still one that I think warrants further discussion.
Yes, for sure. Where do you want to start? There's just so much.
I know, and we have our own stories that we can tell, about our own experience with food and how it plays a role in body shaming, pre-vegan and post-vegan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we can dive right in, or
all right, let's do it. Let's start there. Tell me about your story and how body shaming has been such a part, unfortunately, of your life.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before when we were talking about whether, having this discussion, right? Because I know you've talked about it before. I've never talked about it openly with anyone really, other probably than my immediate, very small circle of friends, right? And I don't even think we have then, probably just my partner. My story with body image goes way back, as most people's do, to my childhood, and unfortunately, molded by my mother, and how she would make comments about me and my appearance, and that really formed how I viewed myself the rest of my life. As much as I try to sort of shake it off, it's there, it stays, it's very, very hard to do. And after I had my daughter, I was very young when I had her in the first place. I was 20, and I was quite small. I'm small just in general. I'm only 5'1". But I saw a picture of myself a couple months after I had her, and I look back at it now, and I think about how beautiful that I was in that picture. But when I saw it at the time, I was not back to my pre-pregnancy weight, and I just thought I was so heavy. And I knew, because it was pressured, because I think my mom made a comment about, I had baby weight. I'm like, I just had a baby, but a comment was made, and that just, it stayed in my head, and everything from my childhood flooded back. And that just really, unfortunately, started my journey with anorexia. And so it got progressively worse, unfortunately, from there. I definitely did not have a lot of support, because my daughter's father was even younger than me. He was a teenager, so we really, even we were just in this whirlwind, relationship, romance, marriage, all this, very young, and we were vegetarian actually at the time. So after I saw that picture, I started starving myself, and I starved myself for a year, and I got married in between that time. Fitting into my wedding dress was a fixation of mine, and I found this really petite one, and I even couldn't fit that, And I starved myself to a very, very unhealthy weight, where it got to the point where my mental health, like I was forgetting things. I couldn't remember my daughter's birthday, like, things like that, right? I couldn't really
Yeah.
get out of the chair to even take care of her. Um, and the unfortunate part is, not many people said anything about my body.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, people who knew me knew obviously that I was suffering,
Mhm.
but like the outside world, they probably just thought, "Oh, there's a slim person," right? Which is really
Yeah.
kind of unfortunate because, I mean, like there was cries of help, you
Mhm.
know. It resulted in my marriage failing and me becoming a single mother. And once that happened, I realized I needed to be healthy in order to do that. And it was a very long journey. I mean, it's never over. I know we've talked about eating disorders. It's never over. It stays with you. It stays with me now as a vegan who has extra weight on her body, and it's manifested into something different, which is obviously what we're going to talk about, body shaming in the vegan community, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, so that's my story around eating disorders and how it's molded, how I view myself now, and why I'm so passionate about this topic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same for me. Mine started super young, and it was a lot of me being made to feel like my value was totally reliant on what I looked like, even as a little girl.
Yes.
And then as you get into like middle school, and then it becomes even more like just everywhere. You notice it to the point where I was in 7th grade and I was using Slim Fast. So I was not eating meals, and then I would maybe lie and say like, "Oh yeah, no, I had lunch, so I'll have a shake for dinner," but I was having shakes 3 times a day sometimes. And it got to the point where, I didn't know what I was doing, right? Because I'm 12 or 13, however old you are in 7th grade here. And I was drinking the shakes, but I wasn't drinking enough water. And then all of a sudden, I have this intense pain in my body and I can't figure out what it is. And it turns out that from the buildup of the fiber, right, I wasn't able to get it all out because I wasn't drinking enough water. So I ended up, it finally got like nothing crazy happened, but this incredible pain and like danger I put myself in because I didn't want to be fat, because I was convinced that nobody could love me or like me or even want to look at me if I was not a normal size.
Mhm.
So, and then by 8th grade, I had like really slimmed down and I thought, oh my God, you're so pretty now. And boys are going to love you and it's just going to be great. And no, because they hated my glasses, they hated my hair. So it didn't matter. And then the weight started to creep back on. And I got to a point where I uh I was binge eating. And it was so bad that I would black out and not remember having eaten anything. It's like I would go to the store and like buy a bunch of stuff when I knew nobody would be home. And I would come home and and this was, I wasn't even vegetarian at this point yet. So I just came home with ice cream and cookies. Sweets were always my thing. And so it was just like tons of sweets. And I would just start eating. And then I think, really black out because I have no memory of actually eating all that food. And I would like come to, and there'd be, half eaten packages of ice cream and cookies and stuff around me. And the weight just kept piling on. And I have fluctuated up and down. And I've had partners who have told me, like, oh my God, you're disgusting as you're so fat. And then, like, the one who did that regularly, he was cheating on me with his boss, I found out later. So it was more of like, here's how he's going to get away from me then. But I couldn't see that then. I really was like, oh my God, my value, like, nobody's going to love me if I'm this big fat person. It doesn't matter who I am, it's what I am. And it's not just people in our own lives, right? It's people in the media, people in our communities, like veganism, where we're supposed to be compassionate and caring and loving. and we're so hateful because people don't look a certain way.
That's so interesting that you talked about your partner, because my husband at the time was cheating on me as well. And was someone who like is healthier looking than me, obviously. And for me, and it was just like, what do I have to do to get attention? Like, I'm 75 pounds.
Yeah.
How much lower do I have to go to,
Right.
feel desired, and yeah, like very few people called me out on it,
Mm.
and what I was eating at the time, because I was vegetarian, I never binged eat. I was never bulimic. I was,
Mhm.
I just starved myself, and then I would go through certain diets that were very, very fat free, but like super unhealthy. Like the one that I had the longest was rice pudding. All I ate was rice pudding.
Oh, wow.
And I ate it with, I wasn't vegan, so I had like skim milk. So it was
Mhm.
like rice, skim milk, sugar. It was like so unhealthy, but it was low fat, and I
Mhm.
restricted myself to that. And then in my other diet that I had, I would only eat what are they called? Those crackers, the big long thin crackers. They're like fat free. They're
Oh, okay.
I can't think of offhand what they're called. But they're like russets almost, right? Like, so like they're fat free with some peanut butter, because I thought, oh, I need my protein, so I'll
Right.
eat peanut butter. So, but it was natural peanut butter, right? It was just a
Mhm.
natural kind. And I just ate that, right? So I wasn't eating anything healthy at all.
Yeah.
It was a very unhealthy diet. It's difficult to yeah, to like look back at that and you know think
Mhm.
about like everything that drove me to be like that, and the unfortunate consequences of that, and how it shapes how I still see myself today. And like you said, in the vegan community, and so that's why it disappoints me so much when I see body shamings, in the vegan community, because like you said, we're veganism on top of it just being about animals. I know we've discussed this on the vegan stew about the definition of veganism, and
Mhm.
how we see it, like it's just about compassion for all sentient beings, human and non-human,
Yeah.
so to see harm to the vegans in the community, intentionally or not, through these words, really, really, it really hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been I can't count on two hands how many times someone has looked at me since I went vegetarian 20 plus years ago up to now when they didn't know me and they find out I'm vegan, and the first response is not like, why are you vegan, or where do you get your protein, right? It's like a look up and down, and you don't look vegan. Like,
Yes.
are you new to it? Because all vegans are thin.
Yes.
And like, that's a terrible stereotype that people outside the vegan community assume. But then it's also kind of perpetuated by, if you look at vegan influencers, and even you said right before we started, so I'll ask you to speak on this. Even ads from like PCRM from years ago, or PETA, like what message were they sending then,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, yes, and even now, I mean, like, obviously, I support PCRM, I support PETA. Like, I am not, saying anything negative. It was, it was probably lapse of judgment, but like even some of the tactics now, I know a big thing right now is like with the lingerie protests, and there's some activists in Australia that are just going out in lingerie, and I don't see any that look like me out there. There is one that's like considered to be like a plus size model. She's
Mm,
gorgeous. She's beautiful, but and she would be considered plus size, like what but she,
mhm.
like I don't see anyone that is like truly plus size, right?
Right.
Out there. And that's not to say that if someone did want to do that, that they wouldn't embrace that, but just the perception,
Hmm.
probably because I know just because self-esteem and all that, I would not feel bold to go out and protest in lingerie,
Right.
but it's furthering the idea of vegans like being slim and
Yeah.
and young and attractive, and so again, not trashing that type of activism. I believe in all types of activism, even ones that I don't agree with. I think it's
Mhm.
all necessary because we reach people through different ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it certainly doesn't help. When we continue to see, all this misconception,
Yeah. And I
around.
think I just had this thought, so let me know if it's crazy. But when you think about those types of activism where they are young, they're sexy, they're really emphasizing that. I wonder too, because there is definitely a time in your life when you're as a teenager or in college, you meet people and you make big changes in who you are. And maybe that is that you go vegan. But I feel like there are so many people that doesn't happen then. When they hit their 30s or 40s, they start thinking about, how am I contributing to the world? Who am I? How do I show up every day? What is meaningful to me? I feel like when you're 20, that's not the stage in your life where you ask yourself those questions. There's other things for you to learn when you're 20. But in your 30s and 40s, then when you start asking those questions, I think that brings in a lot of people to consider veganism. And if they're hit over the head with these young, sexy vegans, does it almost feel like ageism? Where like, oh, well, only young people can be vegan because this is what they're supposed to look like. This is how vegans are supposed to be activists.
Ageism is just one of the problems with body shaming in the vegan community, on top of it being classist and,
Mhm.
like diet, like just everything, food shaming, diet shaming, age shaming, like all of it. Yes, it's so interconnected. I know we
Yeah.
had an episode recently on Vegan Sue talking about intersectionality.
Hmm.
It is all related. I was listening to this really amazing podcast from it's a Veg Fest Colorado. It was about, I think, like 3 years ago, with Andy Tabar, Virginia Messina, and J.L. Fields. I don't know if you listen to it, right? But they make such great points, around, the body shaming in the vegan community, and been reading a ton of podcasts and that, and yeah, just this idea of, I mean, we can even, maybe we want to start with the problem around the health message of veganism and how it contributes to body shaming, right? Because
Yeah.
there's just so many facets that we can talk to
Yeah, for
individually that
sure.
about the problems, right?
Yeah.
But just around like this idea of like veganism is this, sort of like a panacea. That's what Dr. Messina was saying, like, this guarantee that, like, you're vegan, you're not going to get sick, and it's really at the root of body shaming, disease shaming, food shaming, and you
Mhm.
know, um, and we see it so often used in our vegan community, the health message,
Yeah.
um, as a way of getting people on board,
Right.
and I know many vegan activists are probably using it as like they're just trying to grab all these tactics, but I don't think they don't think about like the damage that it can actually do. Because
Mhm.
if you're presenting a vegan diet as being this cure all, this magic bullet, and then people go vegan, you know,
Mhm.
and eating a plant-based diet is different than veganism, as we both know, right?
Right.
But we present it kind of as one and the same, right? So if they do it, because we're saying, oh yeah, you go vegan, you eat a plant-based diet and you're going to have these effects, and then if that doesn't happen, then like we ultimately hurt as a community when people go back to eating meat,
Right.
right? Because we've given them this false pretense that it's, going to do some promise when we don't deliver on the promise that
Right.
we say it is, when we're, trying to appease people from whatever is holding them back from being vegan,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. I had pulled up, where is it? Oh yeah. So thinking about, how was I just going to connect this to what you said? Oh, kind of this whole idea of intersectionality and considering even like different body shapes based on maybe even culture, right? So one of the studies that I found from 2003, and then I saw it also quoted in a Washington Post article from a few years ago, is that, this idea that everyone who's vegan is thin, and that being vegan helps you lose weight and be skinny and appropriate, I guess, in the world that way. It's based on like one study that looked at college age white women, who, by the way, are the most likely group of women to develop an eating disorder. And then they found those who ate one vegetarian meal a week, and they called them semi-vegetarians. And they determined from this study that vegetarianism is what creates the eating disorders and makes people more likely to have an eating disorder. And so then it leads people who are offering treatment to consider like veganism and vegetarianism almost like a cover for their eating disorder. And I think I'm not actually connecting this to anything you said. So I don't know why it just came to me to talk about this now. So I'm sorry about that.
No, it's really it's very, very true. I saw it with my daughter. My daughter's 26, and I was always very open with her about my eating disorder, because I wanted to let my children know that I would never judge them, that I never want them to go through what I did, and especially obviously my daughter, because eating disorders tend to be more prevalent in women, in girls and women. And I saw it with her friends who had eating disorders. What they were eating tended to be vegetarian and or vegan, obviously extremely restrictive,
Right.
but yeah, in mentally they're thinking, equating, the vegetarian and vegan food equal means you're going to lose the most weight, and obviously take it to the extreme, so it absolutely is relevant. And tying it back to veganism, like, women identified represents the majority of people who identify as vegan. We already have this pressure about body image on us in the first place,
Right.
and now we are vegan, and it's amplified that much more, right? And it was really interesting when I was listening to that podcast. Dr. Messina was saying, like, information is based on like 2 studies around vegan health that we kind of pull our information from, right? And so we use that sort of, again, going back to this, like, like we found this silver bullet talk, talking points, because of this, as again, giving these false ideologies. And it comes down to like the word health. And I was talking to my husband about this before I came on, and we were saying, like, the definition of health is not binary. Like, it's not like you're slim, you're healthy, you're overweight, you're not healthy, right? It's not this like checkbox. It's a series of checkpoints, right? Because health is a state, and like there's different barometers that you use to consider to be healthy. You can be slim but then not be healthy because of where you live, air quality, all these other factors, right? So we use this definition of health way too simplistically when we talk about our bodies and what size we should be to
Right.
find health.
Yeah. I have a friend who, she is gorgeous. She fits all of the expectations of what the media and society believes a woman's body should be. And we had a conversation once, because the whole time I've known her, I've been fat. And we were talking about it. And she was like, but you are actually healthier than me, because, I'm vegan. And she was eating cookies and milk for breakfast. She'd have a cheeseburger for lunch, and like whatever junk food was around for dinner. And that was constant. And she just had, I don't know, the blessings of whatever, that she could eat like that in her 30s and still fit the mold. But if you looked at likely a lot of our numbers, if we had tests run and things like that, that I probably would have been healthier on a lot of the different things. And so you're right that there is this idea that if you look this way, then you're healthy and everything's okay. And if you look that way, you're definitely not healthy and you need to change things so that you can look like this. And I just remembered why I brought up that thing, that study about the white ladies and their eating disorders, because thinking about the intersectionality and different body types, not everyone in the world is built like a skinny white lady and just has fat on their bodies. So for a lot of people around the world, this ideal healthy, I'm using air quotes, by the way, listeners, this ideal healthy size and shape isn't even attainable for people. And it's no fault of their own. They're just not built that way.
Yes.
And so how damaging is that?
Yes, I mean, that's what we're seeing with Lizzo, right?
Yeah.
Like people of color have different body shapes or whatever, right? Yeah. So this, yeah, exactly. This one size fits all is just, it's so damaging, right?
Mhm.
To not just to our movement, but just fat shaming and body shaming and Z shaming, all that in general,
Mhm.
right? And I before we started, I've been on Lizzo's Instagram. I cannot read the comments. Most of them are positive, but when they're bad, they're so bad, right? And yeah, I went on them, and just like some of the stuff that people are saying, like it's so depressing,
Yeah.
that people are emboldened when they're on. We know that when you're on social media, you tend to say things you probably wouldn't say in person, but they don't realize the damage that it does to people, right? Because I think when people, I don't know what people think, like people who are overweight, like we know we're overweight. It's not like you're telling us information and be like, oh my gosh, really? I'm
Right.
overweight, right? Like, yeah, exactly, right? So you're not telling anything that we don't already know, right?
Yeah.
Um, but like I think about like my own experience and like what would help me, and like what Lizzo's doing is exactly what would have helped, like just this like body positivity, right? And so she's not saying, yeah, like eat whatever you want, don't be, you know what I mean? She's just saying, I am comfortable in my body.
Mhm.
You be comfortable in your body, I'm comfortable in mine. And we claim to want this as a society,
Right.
but then it only applies, like you said, when we see this like pretty white woman on Instagram doing this, the whole white woman on Instagram from Bo Burnham, by the way, I just love that song, right? But that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
This like white, blonde haired, like beautiful, slim, talking about body positivity, which again, anybody, regardless of your size, should talk about body positivity, but we seem to only give it merit when it comes from someone who isn't really suffering from,
Right.
weight issues, right?
Mhm.
So it's this double standard, right? That we claim we want it, but then when the people who are doing it, who it really is meant for, then we like, no, not you. We
Right.
mean
Yeah.
anyone, right?
How dare you
Yeah,
put
let the
your
skinny person
body.
speak for you, not
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like how dare you be fat and in a bathing suit on Instagram? It's
Exactly.
just, and it's, so I agree that people are very emboldened when they're behind a keyboard, and we see that across everything you can talk about on the internet, right? But being fat is still like the one thing that people in society feel like it's fine to just address it right to your face or behind your back in person. People still make fat jokes and everybody thinks it's hilarious. It's still so funny on TV to make fat jokes. I've had people look at me, just out in the world. Someone once told me, I was dating someone who was taller than me, but not overweight, that we made a perfect 10. And everybody was like, oh, isn't that just the funniest joke? Like, you think so? You don't think that I am a person who has feelings and maybe that doesn't really feel so great because it wasn't anything to do with our relationship. It was how we looked standing next to each other.
Yeah.
And it's just accepted. People say, like you said, people are like, we want everyone to feel good about who they are so they can take care of themselves and, everyone can have the life that they want. But it's not really true because it doesn't really apply to fat people yet. We're just like expected to deal with it. And it's our fault for taking up so much space. And then we're made to feel small even though we're big. And it is still just so pervasive where it's just okay, you know? Or the other thing that gets me because I've experienced it so much in my own life is people who are not dealing with being fat, but maybe they're on the either very small or like there's something where they try to kind of commiserate with you. Like every time I've tried to go shopping, being the weight that I'm at now, it makes me cry. And I know it's within my control to take charge of what I'm eating. So like that's not up for discussion, right? Not with you. This is the general like and so yeah, I could stop that from being a thing that makes me cry either by changing my body or by accepting the way I am now and being like this is just what I got to do and I got to look at different clothes maybe. But then there'll be someone who isn't, maybe they struggle too buying clothes because maybe they're so small and they try to act like it's the same thing.
Yes.
And it's not, because society still thinks they're amazing because they're so small. And they would be like, oh, that sucks that you can't find clothes that fit you properly because you're this tiny little thing. And aren't you just adorable? And isn't that great? And you're so gorgeous and you could wear anything. Don't worry about it. But if a fat person is like, oh, I went shopping and I'm just like, I cried the whole time and I don't know what to do. I can't find any clothes for work or whatever. And it's immediately, well, it's your fault. And what are you doing about it? I can't tell you how many times someone asked me that question. What are you doing about it? Well, that's none of your business, first of all. I don't know.
Yeah. Virginia Messina was saying, on the podcast, like we know, that the studies show that vegans on average have lower BMIs. We're less likely to have diabetes. We're less likely to have hypertension. We're less likely to develop like certain cancers. But there's this stigma of like, if we have developed it, that we did something wrong,
Right. Mhm.
And I'm sure that's goes for non-vegans as well, right? But again, just going back to this idea of like attributing the size of someone's body to ailments they may have,
Mhm.
right? Because we've seen people who are extremely healthy drop dead, like people in the fitness industry, from cancer, like so yeah, it's extremely frustrating, that when people like talk about like how if that if you have an ailment, and I'm gonna go into not even just like physical health ailments, but I think we should talk about mental health as well.
Mhm.
That we caused it,
Right.
right? And I really would love to talk about vegans when they feel blamed that they might have failed.
Mhm.
They're afraid to talk about this with others because they don't want to be judged.
Right.
And a lot of them like are don't want to talk about like if they have to take like conventional medicine, because they're afraid of being judged, right? And even though yes, a vegan diet can help you get off a lot of medications. My husband, who is overweight, actually, and was on thyroid medication before he went vegan, actually got off his thyroid medication, even though he's still even heavier than he was when he went vegan, right?
Mhm.
There really is a stigma about medicine in general. And I know from me, as someone I suffer from depression and I'm on medication, and it's not something that I talk about, right? Because I see so much information in the community, vegan messaging about, how, all you need to do is like, it's your gut health. And again, I'm not saying it's not connected, but it's not that silver bullet where, yes, focus on your gut health. You need to get off medication, right? Because it's not depression. There's different reasons for depression and anxiety, and those types of disorders, right? So I feel shame that I need to take it, and I'm trying to get over that myself, and so I'm also a very big proponent on mental health, in this messaging that, again, this overly simplistic messaging that a vegan diet just cures you of all this. Like, health is not that simple.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important too to remember that that's not even what veganism is about,
Yes.
and I know that people, like you were saying before, they use it as a way to pull people in. Oh, you want to lose weight? Everybody wants to lose weight. I mean, that's the biggest industry, right? Billions of dollars helping people lose some weight, yo-yo right back up and have to lose it again. So of course, that you can pull people into anything. Like, oh, this will help you lose weight. You interested? I bet 9 out of 10 people are. But
Yeah.
that's not the point of veganism.
Yeah.
Because veganism, like we've talked about on the stew, it's like, it's not the diet. That's part of it, because veganism encompasses our entire lives. Every decision we make every single day is governed by the fact that we are vegan. And that doesn't make it restrictive or hard. I think it actually makes it a lot easier because there's like a clear guideline, right? And yeah, vegetables, fruit, I think that's the way humans are supposed to be eating. You look at science and whatnot, it seems like those are the appropriate foods. So does it surprise me that by eating lots of fruits and vegetables and grains and beans and all those good things, that people can get off medication, that they can reverse certain ailments? It doesn't surprise me at all. And I think that it's amazing. And for people who can do it, it's wonderful. But that doesn't mean everybody can do it. And it doesn't mean that it happens like that.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about veganism, it's important that people, and when we're talking about like body shaming and fat shaming within the community, that's not the point of veganism. We do it for the animals, and anything else is a benefit, an extra perk. And the animals don't care if we're fat. The animals don't care if we're thin, tall, short, whatever, as long as we're not eating them, I think they're okay. They're okay.
Yeah. And I've actually stopped wearing like shirts. There's this one shirt that is like vegan for everything. I'm sure you've seen it. It's memes, it's everything, right?
Mhm.
And health is on there. And I've like avoided wearing anything that pertains to health, because exactly, veganism to me, it's not health. It's about not causing harm to animals, to non-human animals, and I extend that to human animals as well,
Yeah.
right? Because just because the whole mentality in the vegan community around this health being a silver bullet has really left like a bad taste in my mouth, and
Yeah.
right, that I really don't want to talk about that to people. And and I'm a coach, and so my thing that I try to use for me is like my story. I was a mom, and I'm a vegan first, and I had teenage children, and how we changed our house vegan, and we basically ate the same diet as before, and now it's plant-based. And because I think like my biggest beef with BEAF is that is that like the messaging, like I push back on this all the time, that I'm not saying that the standard American, I'm in Canada, the standard Canadian diet is that the way that people should eat, like I understand all that, right?
Mhm.
But we want people to like just wrapping their heads around being vegan and all the pressures of being vegan, the social pressures, family pressures, all that is hard enough for someone to consider going vegan. And so this messaging of like, don't just go vegan, like go whole food, plant-based vegan.
Right.
We're not going to make vegans that way. And so at the end of the day, like, what is this? Are we trying to make vegans or not?
Right.
Like the animals don't care,
Mm-hmm.
they just don't want to be eaten,
Exactly.
right? So it really bothers me when I see that, because I think when you go vegan, like you naturally learn about health and you make those changes. And we know just that small change, and even if we ate that standard diet,
Mm-hmm.
we're eating better,
Right.
even if it's incrementally better. Like we're not getting cholesterol anymore, right? That's
Right.
huge. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many people on cholesterol medication, right? So even that in itself, right? But yeah, I really, really push back. And that's for me, that's always been my message as a coach, is like, exactly,
Mhm.
like, look at me. I'm just a mom, and I make all this comfort food, and I'm trying to not to use the word vegan junk food anymore. I read about how that's problematic, and I see it because it's equating to like something negative, right? Kind of like what we're talking about. So I like to use the word comfort food, because comfort food
Yeah.
could be something different for everyone. For me,
Mhm.
it's mac and cheese. That's
Oh, yeah.
my biggest comfort food, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm going to teach you how to make comfort food, and then I'm going to teach you how to make it one way, that and then an even healthier way with the potatoes and
Mhm.
carrots, for example, right? So like there's all these like, from there you can decide like, what your goal is from a
Mhm.
health perspective, right?
Right.
But this whole messaging of we need to be vegan for our health, to me, just doesn't make sense from
No,
the
not
definition of what
yeah.
veganism is, right? It has nothing
Yep.
to do with it's yourself.
Yeah. There's a great place here in New Jersey called Cat's Luck. Cat's Luck. I want to make sure that was clear. Um, and they're like a little cafe, and they serve lots of comfort food. And I remember not too long ago, or maybe it was months ago, who even knows at this point, they posted on their Instagram about how there will be no food shaming permitted in their location. If you are here online to talk about your diet and how much you don't want it, you'd love to have the mac and cheese, but you just can't right now, they were like, please see yourself out, because we're not here for that. Because even if you think you're only talking about, oh, I'm just trying to be healthy, people around you are hearing you shame them for ordering that mac and cheese, for ordering that, that veggie burger that they've got loaded with cheese and french fries and whatever else. And I love it. I love that it's their approach, because it's, if if you want to be vegan, and that's it. You don't have to impress anyone with the way you're vegan, with the way you eat. Oh, I'm so healthy. Like, who cares? Yeah.
Yeah, and so many vegans, activists, like, I don't even think they realize it, especially when they're saying it around other vegan activists who, like might be overweight, when they're talking about that to non-vegans, right? Because we shame non-vegan bodies all the time. We see it in memes, I mean, we see it so prevalent in with COVID too, right?
Yeah.
And around like why people are dying from COVID. And we can get into that if you want, right? Because there's a lot of body shaming there about
Mhm.
people dying from COVID, right? And they're not thinking about like what they're saying and how it might affect their fellow activists who are like hearing you, basically shaming a non-vegan because of their body shape, but like I'm
Mhm.
vegan and I have a similar body. So
Right.
is that really how you think about me as well? Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
really, yeah, really, really frustrating.
I think it goes back to the fact that it's still okay to hate fat people. People, when they're commenting on an overweight body, even if they're surrounded by people who are also overweight, I think it doesn't even occur to them that they shouldn't say those things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I could tell a story. It's not direct. It's related, but not. But it is related. Like
Mhm.
we did a really big protest after Bill 156 went into effect. Like after Regan Russell and her dying. it was when the person was charged, around that time. It might have been around the year of her death or something, but there was a big vigil and all the farmers and truckers were there. And we were like, how, we'd love to know what they were saying.
Yeah.
And so my husband, who is a big guy, went over there. I guess, he was hoping that they didn't maybe see him in the crowd, because he was kind of filming. He's a Jane Unchained contributor, so he was just filming. So it didn't necessarily mean he was with us because he had a camera. He could have just been documenting everything, because he was he was filming them too, right? So it didn't look obvious that he was vegan. And he would just went over there and they never questioned if he was a vegan, because he doesn't look vegan.
Yeah.
And she gets so much information from them, right? So, but when we were aware that we were exploiting, like, it was yucky. Don't get me wrong. We were like, this is really icky that he can do that. Yeah. But he's infiltrated quite a few, like, of these, groups. He's gone, undercover and like infiltrated other groups, right? Looking like a farmer or a, like, because they would never question that he was vegan. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's one of the things that we can say, we can use to our advantage. Right? Yeah. But and we heard it there too, right? We heard, like, and I see the comments like that. There's no way that person's vegan. Look at blah blah, right? So there's a really great so maybe I wanted to read this really great quote that I read. I'll find a link to the blog post that I found it from. But I just wanted to quickly touch upon, like, with COVID, right? Because we're always like, there's this big debate, obviously, about vaccines and about like mandates and staying at home and all this. And it's obviously a very complex topic, right? But what we heard so much in the community, in the media, is like the people who are dying from COVID, were either elderly or like people who were overweight and had pre-existing conditions, right? So this idea of, again, it goes down to fact, like, people, you just stay home. The healthy ones,
right,
should be able to do whatever we want. And if you are immune compromised or overweight or old or a child, well, then you stay home if you're afraid of getting COVID. And it's so dangerous. And we see this in the vegan community. It's so dangerous to say that. It's a whole other level of, like, dangerous rhetoric. I'm really sorry that's like that. Oh. That we need to watch out for, right? But yeah, if I could just, like, really quickly read this, this one paragraph that I really love, and said, idealizing thinness is really the idealization of higher socioeconomic class. It oftentimes takes considerable income that has access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Vegans without that luxury must rely on cheap carbohydrate-heavy grains like flour, pasta, and potatoes. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and even spring water tend to be far more expensive than their processed counterparts. We can forget that socioeconomic status is not simply about economic resources, but social resources as well. In the United States, African Americans, Native Americans, and Hispanics are disproportionately poor, a result of centuries of oppression and continuing inequality. They are also disproportionately located in areas with limited availability for healthy foods, known as food deserts. And people don't think that. Like, that's a whole other, I mean, we can go into that topic probably for another hour about, I know we always say, well, vegan diet is not, it's cheap, right? So there's this mismatch of information where, yes, it can be cheap, but then when you hear about this Whole Foods plant-based discussion, it's like, eat organic, get a nutritionist, eat organic. And like, how much does a nutritionist cost?
Right. Most insurances don't cover it.
Exactly. And in Canada, our healthcare doesn't, right, cover it. And I mean, my husband did get a meeting with a nutritionist, but it took him like 6 months on the list.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So like, how are you supposed to, like, get, if you're like, you're supposed to wait 6 months before you want to get healthy until you talk to your nutritionist. So yeah, it was free, but he had to wait 6 months to access this information. And then when he got it, he was like, oh my God, the information they gave me, they clearly don't have a clue about vegan diets, right? He was pushing back on information they were talking about, and and they were clueless. He was asking, are there any vegan nutritionists in your organized, like, that I can be referred to? And they were like, we don't know, which meant no,
It's a
right?
vegan
They said we're
nutrition.
gonna have to look into it, which meant no,
Right.
you know. So yeah, so there's just this mismatch of information, and I think vegans like forget that, because again, they just want all these talking points to try to convince someone to go vegan, that they don't think about things like this, the socioeconomic aspects of it, and food deserts and all that. And I've been really
Right.
learning about food deserts over the past like almost year, because I'm on Clubhouse, which is a
Mhm.
really great app, and there's tons of vegans on there, and we have rooms all the time, and that's when I learned from, like, because there's a lot of African American vegans on there, and
Mhm.
they talk about this because it affects them, you
Right.
know primarily, right?
Yeah.
So understanding food deserts has like really made me change my messaging in
Mhm.
activism, to understand that, right? To bring that in, to take that into consideration. So I don't use these sort of generalizations of it's cheap. Yeah, just eat fruits, just eat the,
Right.
because it's just not as simple as that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
When you're in a food desert and they get the only people that can afford to like sustain themselves there are places like McDonald's and big corporations, and so that's all
Mhm.
that they have access to, right? So
Right.
it's so much more complex, and I think vegans make it very simple, and it ultimately, um, you know, it hurts our movement.
Yeah, I agree. I learned a new word, food apartheid,
Yes.
because food desert, right, implies that, well, it's just unfortunate that you live here where no food grows or shows up. And food apartheid really speaks to the fact that the food's not showing up there on purpose,
Yeah.
and that it's completely within the system that has created these areas where there's no opportunity. And then a food mirage where they have to travel far. Like they could get the food, get on public transportation and go 45 minutes on the subway, maybe to the farmer's market where all the white people are at. But can
Yeah.
they even afford that? You know, are the prices too high? Can they even get the subway to that
Yeah.
section in the city, you know? And so I too have been learning a lot about that, because I had heard food desert before, but I don't think I, one, really understood exactly what that meant, and two, also like really how many people are affected by that. So as coaches, when people come to us, it isn't just, yay, you want to go vegan, great, it's easy, here's what you do. Like you really have to think about, who is my client, who is this person, and what is their life like, because their life is, probably not exactly like mine. So whatever I did exactly may not be what they need, and it's so important to look at the whole picture. And you're right, it's not just like, hey, you want to lose weight, come be vegan. Oh, you're interested in being veganism, it's so cheap, it's going to change your life. Like, yeah, it is going to change your life, but going vegan for one person is going to look different for another.
I know that the time that we spent in kitchens has greatly shortened from, the 60s, right? I think on average we spend like less than a half hour in a kitchen making our meals, right? We live such an increasingly busy life, and and a lot of that I think is perceived busyness, right? That we just don't pay attention to like our food. We just want something really quick and easy, right? But
Mhm.
again, that's a luxury that not everyone has to afford. There are people working like 2 3 jobs. They do not have time to prep their vegetables for a week or whatever. They
Right.
might have 10 minutes to get to their next job, just so that they can put food on their plate for the children.
Mhm.
So I think again, it really hurts our community to ignore this, and just make these generalizations about going back to body shaming, that someone is the way they are because they're lazy, they're this or they that. There's it's so much more nuanced than that. And
Right.
um
Yeah.
and I think that what the vegan community really can do is to really educate themselves more on this, right?
Mhm.
To be able to have real honest conversations with people to at their level,
Right.
to allow them to really consider veganism, because otherwise they're going to ignore us because they're going to say like they don't understand, and when we don't, they would be
Right.
right.
Mhm.
Ultimately.
One of the things that I was thinking about before we connected was I used to be in like a vegan Facebook group. It's not active anymore, but there were people in there that were like, well, we're not going to say we're vegan anymore. We're going to say that we're plant-based because vegan means junk food. I remember having like a back and forth because to me, I feel really proud to say that I'm vegan and it means a lot to me. And I love to talk about it because I really think that it's the most beautiful way to live. And everyone who wants to do it and is able to do it, come on in and we'll figure it out, you know? Um, and but these people that are like, well, I don't want to be associated with someone who eats junk food. Like, okay, but how's that helping? Because these people were vegan for the animals. They didn't come to it because they decided they wanted to lose weight or they, had a health issue that brought them to eating plant foods. They came into it because they cared about the animals and they wanted to make that ethical change in their lives. And they hit a point where they're like, oh, vegan means junk food. So we're not going to use that word anymore.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, like that is because, and I think that it also is coming back to fat shaming. And now there's fat vegans. I don't want to be associated with a fat vegan. I'm going to tell people I'm plant-based. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. There's obviously some emotion with me around people commenting on other people's bodies. So I still got stuff. I'm working on it. I still got stuff.
I think a lot, and going back to like, vegans who want to go away from the word vegan, not just like, from that aspect, but like of just all of the infighting in the vegan movement. Like we have to have such like strong opinions about everything. And like, so, and the more you like see it and especially like topics like this, it turns you off more and more that you don't want to identify with that community, which is really unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
Um because plant-based doesn't describe me.
Mm-hmm.
Vegan describes me,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But you don't, but then, people think like you're vegan and you're like everybody's unique. Like that's like, saying like you're a teacher, therefore all teachers are the same. Like vegans are just people at the end of the day.
Right.
Right. There are, racist vegans, there's homophobic vegans, there's body
Mhm.
shaming vegans, right?
Yeah.
But when people when you identify as vegan, unfortunately people lump you into just one type of person.
Right.
Right? So it's really hard to it's just a challenge that we have to be like,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a vegan, but I do not think like that. I am not one to, like say, I'm not eating Beyond because it's made in the same fryer as meat and therefore it's not vegan. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's because there's just so much increase in pressure and expectation of just identifying as a vegan,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So like in a way I understand when people don't want to use the word vegan, but I think we need to, and we
Mhm.
need to show that veganism as a movement has all types of people,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
um you know good and bad.
Mhm. Yeah.
you know and that's why I think it's important to have these discussions in our community so that we can raise this awareness and get people to think.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking when you mentioned before about mental health and, taking medication. So I think that there are those people who are like, well, plants will fix everything. So you don't need to take that anymore. And then there are also people that I think might be interested in veganism, but they take medications and they know that the medication at some point in its development was tested on animals. And then does that mean if they decide I'm going to be vegan, that there'll be some vegan or the vegan police will show up and be like, sorry, you're taking that medication, you're not actually vegan. And I think that is really harmful too, because one, I don't think that that's true. Um, Helene gave a really good example. And I wish I could remember which episode of the stew it was. When we were talking about COVID and the vaccine, and there was someone who mentioned in the comments, I will not get this vaccine. It is not vegan. And like she had a whole paragraph about it. And Helene was like, okay, but it's not the same thing. Like if you think about if you were in a bad car accident and you needed to have surgery, and you know that your surgeon was trained on like animals, and like that's how they learned through their schooling, right, how to repair people, and that the tools that they use and the sutures and all of that either may have been tested on animals, use some kind of animal byproduct. Like would you say, no, I'm vegan, please just let me die?
Yeah.
Or would you see it as an opportunity to be taken care of so that you could continue your vegan mission and your vegan message after recovering from this awful thing? So it's the same thing in a way where you think about, well, I need this medication, or, with the vaccine, the same thing, like this vaccine will help make the world safer again. I think it's like you can't say that even if it was tested on animals that you're like, well, you're not vegan if you're taking this medication. So if there's anyone listening who has felt like, oh, I take these medicines and I can't be vegan, yes, you can.
Vegan purity is, like,
The worst.
the big egg and big everything, they don't even need to infiltrate our community. Our community will implode just from ourselves
Yeah.
because of vegan purity, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And it's like the most damaging thing that we can do, right?
Mhm.
And like, if that is how you want to be, then be that. But to say that someone else who is like has their own view on things is wrong because they're not
Right.
like looking at your view is like just so wrong.
Mhm.
And it's there's so much hypocrisy.
Yeah.
We know that there's animal products in almost everything we use.
Right.
So and then this conversation, like this particular topic, like it's like, unless you're gonna live on a deserted island to maintain your vegan purity, if you want to go ahead, but otherwise we're filled with hypocrisy, and that is what we as vegans need. We always are struggling with that, and having to like you know um to come to terms with that, whether it be having pets or vaccines, medication, all that, right?
Yeah.
So then that's not the definition of being vegan, is to you know to, to do it, to minimize the use of animals to the greatest extent possible.
Yep.
And when you are in a position to do it, if your position is okay, like, yeah, I'm not doing it because it's tested on animals, okay, then exactly,
Mhm.
like, but know that it's like, for example, when it comes to the vaccine, like, more people that get sick and the more the virus mutates, we're going to have to come up with another vaccine, which means more animals are ultimately going to be tested.
Yep.
Fight for the animals. There's so many amazing organizations fighting to stop the use of animals in and animal testing, right?
Mhm.
Do that while being able to, like, resolve the hypocrisy you
Mhm.
have, right?
Yeah.
It's because because your decision doesn't mean like it's saving anything, right?
Right.
It's ultimately making things worse for the animals.
Mhm. Yeah.
um, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
so prevalent. And again, yeah, with whether it be with vaccines or with medication, food, like, it's all interconnected as we've talked about in the past, right?
Yeah.
And I get why people, I mean, I get why people don't want to be vegan. I don't even talk to people about all this. Like, when I talk to people about going vegan, it's always just like food, like, and then you from there you can say, okay, well, you might also want to consider what you wear and the products that
Mhm.
you use and this and that, right? But
Right.
I would never overwhelm them with all this, because it would just, nobody would go vegan if we
Right.
um,
Yeah.
um, made these like purist statements.
Mhm. Yeah.
um it's it would be just too much for most people.
Mhm. And we don't live in a vegan world. right?
Exactly.
Unfortunately. So there are animal products or the use of animals everywhere, like you were saying. So we've got to do the best that we can. And that, like, that's intentional. Is, I know some people like to twist that. Oh, the best that I can is to like eat cheeseburgers only 3 times a week. So I'm still a vegan because this is the best I can do. No, that's not what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
Within the definition of veganism, like there's as far as possible and practicable, right?
Yeah.
That's what the definition says. So
And tying it back to like food, like we have someone again, using Lizzo as an example because we're talking about body shaming. How many people follow her? I don't know, tens of millions of people,
right.
and she's spreading veganism,
Mm-hmm.
eating vegan cake, and not
Yeah.
with and going like, look at
And
me,
loving every minute
and
of it.
we're going to say like we're going to criticize that,
Right.
you know when she,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't get me wrong, I do not like the fact that we turn to celebrities for the way that we are to behave, but it's a fact of life. It's
Yeah.
just our society is as
And
icky as I and vegans are really just as equally bad. The people who we worship in the vegan community, like that's a whole other topic that we can get into, right? I really can't stand it, because going back to, we can even tie it into it, the people who we tend to worship in the community, and there's a very small list of people probably for
mm-hmm.
most people are thin white males, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And who are attractive,
Right.
sexy, fit,
Yep.
but yeah, it's a reality that we love our celebrities and all that, and we look to them as how to behave, and how Lizzo looks should be the least of our concern.
Right.
She could potentially turn thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people vegan,
Mm-hmm.
by normalizing it. Like, it's all about normalizing
Yeah.
veganism, right? And that is how we're doing it, because vegans are all shapes and sizes,
Yep.
right? That is normalizing veganism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To say a whole food plant-based vegan is normal, it's not normal,
Mm-mm.
right? I think the study was something like 30% of vegans are overweight, right? So like that's that, that's yeah, that is the normalization, you know.
Yeah.
Um then what do you want to do after you go vegan? How you want to be? That's a whole other thing, right?
Mm-hmm. This has been so good, Kelly.
And
So,
I know we can go on for
oh my
hours.
God, I know this could be all night. And when people be tuning out and like have to come back when I post a 3-hour podcast, I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, and
Segmented out.
yeah, we could follow up. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, and I don't hear it, talked about enough. So I'd really love to. I can't wait to like hear people's reactions to it, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is a sort of a stigma in the community of a topic. Because I don't think people want to admit that it exists,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
In our community, but it is, and it's
Yeah.
more prevalent than we care to admit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, people, are biased against fat people everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah. And in the vegan community where so many vegans run around like, oh, we're better than you because like we're not harming animals, but are they when they're mean?
Yeah, exactly. And again, COVID has just amplified it so much. So many memes I'm seeing in like anti mandate, anti-COVID, all those memes, they all usually involve like an overweight person, like an overweight person in a scooter with a mask, and a slim person, and the person saying like, aren't you afraid of COVID? The overweight person, and
Mhm.
right, so like there's
Yeah.
just so, and they don't, and the thing is that I don't even like, they don't, I don't know if they don't think about it. Like I'll see vegans sharing these memes, and someone will call out and say like, this is fat shaming, this is an unacceptable meme, and then
Mhm.
they're quick to defend, well, that wasn't my intention. Okay, if that wasn't your intention, delete the meme,
Right.
because it's wrong,
Yeah.
right? Instead of like
Mhm.
defending and the message that is wrong, and say
Mhm.
that wasn't your intent, right? you
Yeah.
know So again, it's just showing like, again, a lack of compassion to someone who's saying, I'm offended by this, and, because you might not see it this way, but this is how a lot of people are going to perceive this to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's their ego or it's whatever that's sharing it, or they want to get laughs or likes or whatever their intent is in sharing this post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one of them that you had shared before earlier today, it was like a fat person and a thin person. It was like, this is the skeleton or whatever of like a 250-pound woman, and here's a 120-pound woman. Like, I've seen other versions of that where the fat person, their insides are full with cheeseburgers and cake. Like, that's what the image is. It's just their whole body. It's ice cream cones and whatever. And then the thin person, that image is all like beautiful vegetables and fruit and grains. And it's so mean. I just keep going back to how mean it is.
Especially because I was like, I'm always looking for recipes because I'm also a vegan chef, right? And I'm always looking. I want to start making those like comfort food, like comfort desserts healthier,
Mhm.
So here I am, like I found this amazing looking brownie today. I'm like, I'm gonna make that, and it was gluten free. It was like super healthy, made with all fruits and that. And I was like, that could easily be in that 120-pound body, right?
Yeah.
Because why, like, because you can eat like that and have it be healthy, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I found another meme today that was like, I don't know if it's this older man. He's white and he's got a beard. He looks like Santa, and it's like, when Santa goes vegan, and it's this guy, and he's wearing the plaid suit, this red suit, super
Mhm.
slim and
Yeah.
cool as heck, and and again, like, 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 really, we're gonna fat shame Santa now? Really?
Right?
Is that how low we're going
There
as
are
a
no
big
rules anymore.
community? That we're fat shaming a fictitious
Oh my
character, right?
gosh.
So to me, it's like, wow, on, but I'm not shocked by anything that I see anymore.
No. Yeah.
Very sad, but it's the truth.
Mhm.
Just when I think we've gone lower, we get lower, and
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, Kelly. This was so
thank you.
good. Yeah. I know, like we keep saying, like we could just keep doing this, but I want to keep it.
Yes, yes.
But I can't thank you enough for being here and having this lively, honest conversation with me. I really think that the listeners will benefit from it, whether they are vegan or not. I think is an important message to get out. And thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks, Kimberly, and to everyone that's listening. Yes, yeah, I want to be honest and raw in my experiences, right? And if anyone feels that they don't have anyone to talk to, and they identify with anything that I said, they can reach out to me at any time. They have, someone who has I will support you, right? With no judgment.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
So much.
Can you believe that I forgot to ask Kelly about her favorite hummus? It's like the thing I ask everyone, and I totally forgot. But thankfully, she told me anyway after we had stopped recording. Kelly's favorite hummus is a chocolate hummus. She'd been curious about it, and one day her husband so kindly brought some home. They had it with some fruit, and it stole Kelly's heart. Her favorite way to enjoy savory hummus is as a plate with rice, falafel, and pita. Just thinking about that combo has made me hungry. It's my favorite way to enjoy hummus, too. Check out the show notes for ways to connect with Kelly and for links to various topics we discussed in this episode. Following an incredible response to my 2/22/2022 evening of meditation, I have launched a monthly meditation program where we connect, tune in, and discover things about ourselves. Check out my website for more information. All sessions through the end of the year are available, so sign up now so it's on your calendar. I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. This is a subject so near and dear to my heart. If you are feeling the pain of fat shaming, please reach out. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're loving it, please give Did You Bring the Hummus a 5-star rating. It's an easy way to keep supporting the show. You are also invited to join my free private Facebook group for fans of the show. You can find the link in the show notes. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Did You Bring the Hummus, and visit my website, www.didyouBringTheHummus.com, for more information about me, updates on what I'm working on, new podcast episodes, and all things vegan. Finally, I would love to hear from you. What do you need help with? Is there a topic you want to hear covered on a future episode? Are you a vegan who would be interested in being a guest? DM me on Instagram or send me an email at Kimberly@didyouBringTheHummus.com. Thanks for listening.